during the supervision process, considering now the emergence and the use of AI within the research process. Right, so my name is Dr. Moringa. I'm a founder and member of the AfriLeader AI. My background involves participating in developing the UKZN AI policy framework, and I'm also a former member of the UKZN AI task force. Over the few years, since 2022, I've been very actively involved in advising deans and academic leaders on AI ethics, especially in thesis examination. To date, I've trained more than 1,200 academics and researchers on the ethics of generative AI, and we're doing a lot of work within the universities and at the private and personal level with different stakeholders that we are engaged with. Right, so managing the supervision relationship in the age of AI, you'd understand that before we get to where we are now, there's different ways of how we were doing things, right? So what we want to achieve, the objective of this engagement today is trying to understand how the landscape, the supervision landscape has shifted, and how supervisors and students and mentors, mentees and mentors, I mean, in the relationship between a supervisor and a supervisee, how we can navigate that landscape that has changed for both, right? The supervisor is, in most instances, not prepared, and the student also is coming, anticipating that the supervisor will bring them to speed, right? So that complex environment, I think that's what we need to look at and see how best we can navigate and enhance ourselves with equitable and tools and knowledge, so that we can get the best supervision experience for both the supervisor and the student. Right. So the premise of my presentation today is uh, premised on the philosophy of learning and unlearning. Right. So I'm saying that the process of supervision in the age of AI begins with unlearning. Right. And what are we talking about when we're saying unlearning? So the process, basically the process of learning, begins with the process of unlearning. Those things cannot be separated. Where you are learning something, you're actually unlearning orthodox things, and you getting new information. So that's what the process of the supervision is in the age of AI, right? And this presentation, I hope, it's going to be very helpful for emerging scholars, right? Early career researchers who have just started supervision. Maybe you're supervising your first honors or master's student, or you just registered for a master's or a PhD. I think the insights that we are going to get from this presentation might come very helpful, right? So the challenge now is, before we get to supervision, right? I see there's a hand on from Tetwa. Yes, Tetwa, before we proceed. Dr. Mtetwa. All right, I consider that maybe that was just a hand, right? So before we get to where we are now, there is a kind of supervision that existed.
Hello, Doc. Hello, colleagues. I can hardly hear you. I don't know about others. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, am I better now? Hello.
You can hear from our side.
Is that better now?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you so much. We're gonna proceed. Thank you so much, Dr. Mtetwa, for bringing that up. So before we go to where we are now, right? The supervisor supervisor-supervisee relationship existed. There's a kind of relationship that existed prior to the use of AI, right? So we basically characterize that relationship as a one-to-one human relationship, right? Where there were two different models. There were three models actually that existed, right? And they are still in existence because I understand that some supervisors still do not want their students to use AI. So I cannot boldly claim that they pre-existed. So those models are still in place. So the first one is the master apprenticeship model, where it was determined or characterized by hierarchical dynamics, where the supervisor was basically viewed as a top-down transmission of knowledge from an expert to a novice. Right, in this space is I'm the doctor, I'm the professor, you are the student, you come, I download my knowledge on you, I guide you on how to go about it to develop this discipline or the board of knowledge. So you are getting knowledge from me. I'm actually taking you through the whole process. Then there's the Oxbridge influence also, that is coffin. It's more or less like a tutorship model where it relies on regular face-to-face meeting where the supervisor would manually critique every aspect of the work from high level theory to basic grammar and structure, right? That still happens. That still happens. And in this case, you would find that the supervisor still is the one who is in control of the body of knowledge. What the student is going to do is that the student is going to search for knowledge, for literature, for everything, right? Then they come and try to put it together, but the supervisor would still guide them into putting that work together. Then there's the sole authority. The supervisor is the unique epistemic authority, right? Responsible for judging the validity of research design, and that still happens. That still happens a great deal, right? Even in the age of AI, where the supervisor is now who's the one who say, okay, look, this is these are the research designs that you need to use in this field, right? And the quality of literature reviews, that no, your literature review that you've done is not nice, is not well, it's not coherent, it's not rigorous. Then they will suggest for you readings, they will suggest for you books to go and read, and the final readiness for examination. So they're taking you through, right? They're taking you through. So we define and we characterize that as the one-to-one human relationship, where it's the master apprenticeship model. So you are basically going through an apprenticeship as a student, and your supervisor, you are the body of knowledge. You guide the students through the epistemic knowledge. You the student is the novice, and the supervisor is the expert in this particular case. Then this kind of supervision, right, in as much as
Hello, can someone help? Because I can't hear a thing. I'm not so sure if this is my problem only. Um, can someone please help? Yeah.
right, I just want to check, is everybody okay with the sound, or there's a problem?
I
So
can
far
hear
on
you
my
clearly,
side,
doctor.
we're hearing you clearly. I think it's his side.
The sound is okay for me. I'm not so sure about others.
All right.
It's
So
very clear from my side.
Yeah, I can hear you now if you're not sharing your
my
PowerPoint presentation.
is
But
it?
when you're sharing, I wasn't hearing anything.
Oh, that's let's try this. Could it be the network maybe?
I'm not so
It's
sure.
his
That's why I'm
network.
checking with
I
others if
believe so.
It's your
we're
network,
taking any
sir.
challenges.
So
There's no problem from our side.
okay, so that Dr. Mtetwa, perhaps you might need to look at maybe the network or something, or change the service provider. I'm not sure if that's possible with you. Um, so the manual research process, so this supervision way of doing things, and this relationship between the supervisor and the student involved a lot of manual research work, right? Manual research processes where, effort was painstaking. The tasks are now, everything has to be going through the supervisor, reviewing and everything, right? Then this also encourage some level of technical Dagari, right, supervisors that spend significant time of on low level tasks such as, looking at the grammar, looking at sentence construction, looking at the page, the minor grammar things, right, that the supervisor would need to do in this kind of in this kind of relationship, in this kind of traditional way of supervision, right? You need to look at the page numbers, you need to look at how old the sources are, you need to look at the students' sentence construction, you need to look at the paragraphs length, you need to look at the sentence length, you need to look at everything, right? That's what's really painstaking, right? And the supervisor in this particular relationship is served as a they basically served as an information bank, right? They were the information bank. What does that mean is that supervisor acted as bankers of knowledge. What they're simply doing is they're providing students with specific references, data sets, or methods that weren't easily discoverable through the automated period that we find ourselves in. Right. So, but things have changed, right? And how things have changed, right? So, but the key challenge is with that kind of supervision, the traditional way of supervision. I acknowledge that it has been working for centuries, right? It has worked for centuries, but you'd agree with me that there was a high tendency or level of isolation between the supervisor, the student, especially when you're doing your PhD, right? In the absence of digital collaboration tools, students, especially in the distance learning, you're doing your PhD, you stay in Nigeria, you stay in Zimbabwe, you often feel or felt a deep sense of intellectual and social isolation, leading to high dropout rates. You are doing this on your own, nobody's there for you, you are pushing yourself, you're pushing on your own, you put the chapter together, the supervisor go through it, then they debunk your whole research design, they debunk everything that you've done, right? Then it also led to dependency risk, right? The one-on-one nature that meant that if the supervisor was unavailable, and if the supervisor lacked expertise or provided poor feedback, the student had no safety net or alternative digital tools to maintain progress, right? So if in this age or time, you as a supervisor still maintain that you don't want your students to use AI tools or to use the digital platforms that are available now, right? You're perpetuating these ideas, right? You become the central bank of knowledge, right? And even the quality of the students' work can go as far as the supervisor knows, right? Or if you provide the student poor feedback, the student had no safety net or alternative sources of knowledge, except if they have a wide readership, right? So there's also an issue of quality inconsistencies because the process was largely or is largely private and unmonitored, where the student is working on their own and they only submit the chapter to the supervisor. The quality of supervision varied widely between individual academics, right? With lead to institutional oversight or standardized guidelines. You'd see that one colleague or one professor is producing their students are very well prepared for any research project. They are versatile in terms of how they can approach any research problem and methodologies, right? Because they are drawing that information or knowledge from their supervisor, who's an expert. But to those who are being supervised now by early career academics, right? Somebody who just graduated with their PhD, right? You see that there is a variation in consistency, the quality of work across the graduates within the same discipline varies a great deal. Why? Because we are specifically relying on the supervisor as the central focal point of knowledge and of information or epistemic knowledge, right? So that's the nature and characteristics of the traditional supervision relationship that has existed for ages and for years and is still existing to now. But we the landscape is being reshaped now, right? We're reshaping the advent of AI tools now is reshaping postgraduate supervision by shifting it from a traditional hierarchical master apprenticeship model relationship to a hybrid collaboration. Now it has become, and this is a very difficult one for senior colleagues, because when you have practiced, or at least, okay, colleagues, there's somebody with the mic that's unmuted. Can you please, if you may, mute your mic? All right, thank you so much. Right, thank you so much for that. Right, so we're saying the change that is happening currently with the advent of AI in the has unsettled the student relationship, because at both ends, right, they were not prepared. Right, the institution is not prepared, the supervisor is not prepared. The supervisor has spent 40 years within the academic setting, and what they know is the kind of supervision that they've known. But the student now is coming up with other ways of doing research that seem to threaten the pedagogies that has been already ingrained in the supervisor's way of doing things, right? So if that relationship is not managed, it is not regulated in other ways, you'd find the scenarios. For example, one scenario that I've encountered, the student went to use the various tools. They used a combination of consensus, then they used also elicit, then they used ChatGPT to bring together their literature review, right? And the literature review was so good, such that, and it was a first attempt by the student, right, to submit the literature review. And the literature review was so good, such that the supervisor didn't believe that at first instant a PhD student would submit such a good literature review. And the supervisor took the work and submitted it on a platform called Just Done It, right? And the work reflected that it is high AI percentage, right? But the student, because the relationship between the student and the supervisor is understood by the supervisor themselves, is the one that is hierarchical, right? Is the one that is the master apprenticeship, where the supervisor, they sees themselves as the body of knowledge, the embodiment of knowledge in the discipline, right? And negating that the student is coming up, is not just coming in with a tabula rasa, with an empty head, right? The student has learned some other ways of doing things that otherwise unsettled the student. So that situation now became a very complex situation and difficult situation for the supervisor and the student. And the supervisor normally is imposing. The supervisor tends to be imposing, because they're saying, I'm the one who is supervising you. I'll tell you what you need to do and what you need to use, right? I don't want you to use these tools. Go and rewrite and redo the literature review. But the student is coming and trying to explain that, no, this is how I've done my work, right? This is how I've get to where I've got to. This is how I've produced this kind of work. What the supervisor did is, the supervisor did not want to take that. They said they don't want to hear anything about AI. They don't want anything to do about that. And that puts the student in a position of powerlessness, right? Because the student wants to graduate, they want to finish their work, but the supervisor is still stuck in the master apprenticeship relationship or model of supervision, right? Not understanding that the landscape has changed, and it has been changed by AI, and the body of knowledge is not simply housed by the supervisor. Now, in the age of AI, the student can actually come and teach the supervisor different type of methodologies and how to construct a literature review in a very streamlined way and a seamless way, right? And supervisors needs to be aware of that, right? And they need to appreciate that imbalance, the asymmetric relationship has been shifted, where the body of knowledge is not only domicile within the discipline, or those who have been in the discipline for a long time, because the knowledge is all over accessible, right? Anyone can ask a question and get the answer right away, right? So it's not about who has the monopoly of knowledge anymore, because the knowledge is readily available for everybody. The question is about how is the knowledge packaged, right, to answer the research questions or objective. So that's the landscape that the supervisors faced, and the challenge mostly from our scenarios that we'll discuss as we proceed. The most challenge is coming from the supervisor themselves, because the supervisor, they are caught off guard, right? And because they are caught off guard, what they do, they respond from a position of power, right? And when they respond from a position of power, they relegate the student in a place of powerlessness, where the student couldn't or could not confront the student, the supervisor, or challenge what the supervisor said. Right, colleagues, there's another mic again that is muted. Can that please be muted? Right. Right. So the AI meditated supervision model, right? So the introduction of AI tools is transformed the knowledge environment, like I've said, right? The supervisor relationship is no longer about man-to-man relationship, right? They are now, and supervisors and students and the academics and everybody else needs to acknowledge that the relationship has three fundamental beings, right? If you'd want to call AI a being, right? So the supervisor is number one, the student is number two, and AI is number three, right? That should never be taken out of the picture when discussions about supervision are taking place, right? So the supervision landscape has changed. The relationship involves three factors now, or three sources of knowledge, right? The first one is the student, the first one is the supervisor, the second one is the student, and the third one is AI. Now, because why can we not, or should we not remove AI from the discussion or from the picture? And why are we regarding AI as another factor in the supervision matrix? Is because it allows students to generate draft text quickly. That text that the supervisor is waiting for from the student, right? It can be done with the AI, right? With limited intervention from the student, right? That makes AI a huge player within the matrix of developing a thesis or a dissertation. So student can now access conceptual explanation instantly, right? You don't need to sit down with your supervisor or get 10 books from the library to go and read so that you can come up with a conceptual model or conceptual theory. At the press of a button or a single command, you can retrieve the conceptual framework that speaks directly to your research questions or to your study. That relegates to some extent the power that the supervisor had in this matrix, the power the supervisor had to determine what conceptual relationships can be used in the study. Now the AI can do that on behalf of the student. And now what is left of the student supervisor's role as it pertains to conceptual explanations, right? Now AI also can structure chapters with AI assistance, right? You remember the supervisor would give direction as to how the chapter is supposed to look like, right? But now the AI can do that for the student, and with the absence of the supervisor and minimum intervention from the student himself, AI can produce a structure of the chapter, right? This changes information asymmetry in the supervision process. So the relationship has changed, roles have been changed. So if there is any supervisor, right, who's still stuck in the apprenticeship model or the hierarchical model, I think chances of having a back and forth with the student are very high, or producing work, I mean, that is lopsided, are very high, right? But what then are we saying? Right, so we're saying the relationship has also changed from gatekeeper to facilitator, right? The supervisor is no longer the source of knowledge. We've already acknowledged that because AI tools can handle routine tasks like grammar interaction. You remember that the supervisor would correct grammar, would say English, UK English, will make those corrections, literature mapping, you need to map the literature, and data analysis, you need to do data analysis. This is how you do the Brown and Clark thematic analysis. This is how you do focus group, allowing the human mentor to focus high quality mentorship. So the change of the relationship now that we have, or the change of the roles that AI is brought into the playing field is threatening to the supervisor, because it requires the supervisor to be ahead and to move away from those small menial tasks like editing, corrections, mapping, and stuff like that, to high quality mentorship and complex theoretical guidance, right? You need to move from you just saying, no, this is how you write a literature review, this is how you write a paragraph, this is how you construct an argument. Those things now are become redundant as the role of a supervisor. The supervisor themselves, they need to move beyond constructing arguments, thoroughly reviewing a student work, to high quality mentorship and complex theoretical guidance. But what does that mean in actual practice, right? But we'll get there. So there's also a shift from process orientated to oversight, because AI can mask gap in student understanding, right? You can't tell now if a student understood what they have read or not unless you've sat down with them, right? But when they submit the work to you, right, the work looks good. Right, the work looks good such that you don't need to do any grammatical work, and you don't need to. The students now, the AI tools that are there. If by any chance a student submits their work that does not have a good grammar, that student needs to be set down to say, how are you doing this in the age of AI? Because there's Grammarly, there's ChatGPT to fine tune and enhance your work, right? So, but supervisors must now look beyond the final document, right? Like you used to do. Let's read the final document again and see if it flows, and monitor the research process. So we're saying the supervisor should move from the idea of looking at the final document and all those small things, to look at monitor the whole and the entire research process from the first prompt, right? From the first prompt that was used by the student, to the prompt sheet, to the output, to the revised output, to the revised everything. This supervisor needs to go through the targeted questioning and ongoing engagement with the student, not just to wait for the document, because if you wait for the document, you're going to get a perfect document. So what then is your role as a supervisor? So we're saying the supervisor needs to shift from just waiting for the document to come to them, to understanding the prompts that the student is using, right? To understand the prompts that the student is using. We're also talking about the democratization of support, right? Why? Because you'd understand that when the supervisor is not there, the student gets stuck, and you hear the student say, my supervisor never responds. I don't know how to go about this chapter. I don't know how to go this theoretical framework, one of the most difficult aspects. I don't know how to go about the methodology and stuff like that. But AI provides 24/7 on-demand assistance, particularly for students who may hesitate to ask basic questions or who face language barriers, and as a result, reducing the total dependence on the supervisor. So from what we've discussed so far, we can see that the level of dependence that the student has on the supervisor has shifted, right? The supervisor, his role needs to be rethought, right? You need to rethink your role in this whole matrix as a supervisor, because if you wait for the document, you get one of the best documents that you've ever read in your life, that maybe you yourself as a supervisor, you cannot produce, right? So, but now let's talk about the multi-phased role of AI within the supervision process, or the writing of the research project. So we're saying AI now is a co-pilot, right? It handles your time-consuming administrative and technical burdens, such as summarizing articles, right, correcting syntax, and organizing data that otherwise the student and the supervisor would need to sit down and do and discuss how to go about it, right? Then also reflexive collaborator, right? It acts as a co-thinker or conversational interlocutor, right, that can cross-check for biases, refine the tone. I'll tell you that you as a student, you can write your chapter using one AI tool, then you go and review your own chapter for yourself with another AI tool, or on the same platform, and see how you can strengthen that platform before you even go to the supervisor. So the process of reviewing and critiquing the work, and that role coming from a supervisor, has also been diminished to some extent, because the available tools can offer that tool before the student actually gets to the point of submitting their final professional work to you, right? The project oversight too. So supervisors use AI-driven dashboards to track student progress, right? This is what we need to monitor writing frequencies and receive alerts when milestones are missed, right? Enabling more timely interventions, right? So this is what the level where we need to go as supervisors and students in the AI age, to say, let's create and use dashboards, right? Let's check what the student is doing. Let's monitor their progress. Let's monitor the charts that they're doing with. You can share your chat GPT prompts chart, the whole chart that you did for your for your literature review with your supervisor, and receive alerts when milestones are missed, right? Enabling more timely intervention. So we are engaged in that process with the student on a daily basis or on a regular basis, so that we're not simply waiting for the document, right? So emotional scaffolding, AI chatbots, e.g. Wearbot, can provide surrogate emotional support for research-related stress and isolated, right? Through, though they cannot replace the empathy of human beings, right? So we're saying even way beyond the supervisor telling you that, a research is a tough one, you need to go on and stuff like that. They're actually tools that have replaced that role of the supervisor, right? But when we have integrated, assuming that the supervisor has come on board and the students, there's what we call the trust challenge, right? The trust challenge is that if we do not deal with the issue of trust in the supervision relationship when AI is involved, right, that relationship is going to be messy, right? Because when the supervisor accuses or assumes that the student is using AI, right, and the student is not disclosing that they're using AI, there's already a relationship of mistrust, right? Whereas trust is the foundation of effective supervision, right? And AI complicates this relationship because supervisors may wonder, what was this chapter written by the student? Right. The moment a supervisor asks that question, was this chapter written by the student? The level of engagement or how the supervisor engages with their work is totally different, right? Because she or he is not trusting, right? The supervisor may ask, did AI generate this argument? I mean, it's master's level, honors level, PhD level. I wasn't generating this kind of arguments for myself. Right? How come the student is generating this argument? Right? When you, as a supervisor, you're sitting down and you're asking yourself these questions, it means you didn't start at a good note with your student. All right, it means you didn't start at a good note, because the relationship in the age of AI between a supervisor and supervisee, it should start with establishing the boundaries, and the trust should be set, right? There should be built trust between the student and the supervisor, and the ways to do that, we're going to get into that, right? But also, when the student or the supervisor is asking those questions to the student to say, was this chapter written by a student, or did AI generate this argument, right? The student may feel distrusted or over policed, right? And already when a student felt like, oh, the supervisor doesn't trust me, who do they think they are? They think I cannot produce this kind of work. They're always overlooking, they're always looking at what I'm doing. They always want to know how I'm writing my work. What they should receive is the chapter. Why should they care? They just need to get the chapter. If the chapter is good, then we should proceed, right? Already that relationship is toxic, right? Even though it is regulated by professional boundaries, right? But that relationship is already toxic because there is no trust between the two parties. And from experience, right, if things go wrong along the way, right, they will be supervisor student blaming each other, right? So and it happens when there is no clear boundaries, or when both parties are unsure about what is acceptable use of AI, right? Even though university have tools, have policies and everything that they've given, but the supervisor and the student, the first meeting that they have, they must set the boundaries. They must talk about what tools are we going to use, and the student should explain to the supervisor what tools have they used and have they tried using before. And the supervisor must also share with the student what they think is acceptable, right? If that conversation does not happen on the first day of the meeting between the supervisor and the student, chances of things falling apart are very high. And chances of that the relationship will be filled with mistrust are very high. This is where you'll find the supervisor now at the day of submission, they are afraid of submitting the student's work to examiners because they are not so sure of what the student has done, right? So we're saying managing AI therefore requires trust building rather than surveillance. Students and supervisors, especially supervisors, should now therefore move away from the surveillance a way of doing things, to want to monitor the tools that the supervisor is using, to be running with the student work, to upload it on tools, to upload it on Turnitin, to upload it on highlighting, indicating AI within the student's work. I think the supervisor, it's high time that they need to move away from that approach of always surveillance, of being a panopticon on students' work, and look at how from the beginning are we going to use these tools. Because the moment the student feels supervised or not supervised, surveillance, being tracked down, that student will not produce the best or will not bring to you the best tools or be confident enough to share and disclose the tools that they use that would otherwise in the long run assist the whole discipline or department. Right, so we have a scenarios of things that have happened before, right? The first scenario that we've encountered and how we think can be solved is that the student, the first scenario is the perfect AI generated chapter, right? The student submits an unusually polished chapter far beyond their previous writing work. You're looking at what the student was writing in the proposal, right? The student was struggling, and by any chance the student yes, Dr. Gilbert, are you saying something? Right. So the student bring a polished work, right? Something that is finalized, right? And now when the student supervisor compares what has been submitted, now the literature review chapter, and what the student was developing in their proposal, now this becomes a problem, right? Because the supervisor now may suspect AI overuse, right? But the challenge is that the supervisor cannot easily prove it, right? Which can create mistrust, and that already there is mistrust, right? But how then should supervisor and student handle this situation? Now we say supervisors should open a discussion about AI use rather than accuse, right? Move away from accusing. Let's have a conversation. Ask the student to explain their argument, theoretical choices, and source in a meeting. Evaluate understanding rather than policing the text. Stop policing the student text, right? And get to a point where the student, you need to evaluate if the student understand what they've written, right? If the student understand the key debates, the theories, the fundamentals of the work that they've produced, right? If they can defend what they've produced, right? Stop policing what the student has produced, right? And another scenario is the undisclosed AI use, right? A student uses AI extensively but does not disclose it, right? And this is problematic because there's a lack of transparency, and that undermines trust and raises ethical concerns regarding authorship, right? But how do we need to regulate this relationship or this situation? The supervisor needs to establish an AI disclosure expectation early and encourage students to include AI use statements explaining how tools were used, brainstorming, editing, how was this chapter developed, how was the literature review developed. That is very important because it safeguards both from being accusing and other one policing student work. I know of a supervisor, a colleague of mine, they were going through the students' literature review, and they got distracted in reviewing the student work, because what they were following now, they were now following through American dashes in the student work. They were highlighting, this is an American dash, right? We don't write using American dash, this is AI, right? Then they look at long sentences, they say we don't write using long sentences, this is AI, right? They go and look, this, you're using Z, this is American stuff, this is probably ChatGPT work, and a whole lot of indicators that point to the use of AI, to the point where the supervisor lost track of the argument that the student was pushing in the literature review. Now the supervisor lost track to say, is this chapter making sense? Right, before you get to the technicalities, to the small grammatical cosmetics of the work, is the chapter reading like a PhD chapter, right? Those will follow, but it's because the relationship from the onset did not have parameters. Right. So disclosure is very important, right, for both the supervisor and the student, right? So the importance of transparency can also never be overemphasized, right? Transparency is essential in AI-assisted research. Students should openly disclose whether AI tools were used, at what stage AI was supported, how AI outputs were refined. Transparency protect academic integrity, intellectual accountability, and supervisor-student trust. Right. Another kind of scenarios that we faced, also that we've dealt with, is number one, the fabricated references from AI, right? This is a challenge because a student includes references suggested by AI that do not exist or are inaccurate. And why this is problematic is because AI sometimes generate incorrect or fabricated citations, which then in the long process compromise academic credibility. But now, how do supervisor and student handle this? It's not for the supervisor to discard the whole chapter, right? It's not for the supervisor to make the student feel bad about what they've done, right? We need to require students now, therefore, to train them and teach them how to verify all references manually, right? Human judgment. Now, the supervisor needs to come in and say, hold on, sit down. This is how you verify. Encourage use of academic databases rather than relying solely on AI. Take the students to Google Scholar, take the student to Scopus, take the student to ProRequest, take the student to Consensus. Teach them and guide them beyond you highlighting what the supervised student has done. You need now to guide them. But the challenge is that when the supervisor themselves do not know how to use these tools, right, the student will always be at the mercy of the AI tools. Another scenario will be AI replacing critical reading. But a student relies on AI summaries instead of reading the original literature, right? This weakens is a problem, conceptual understanding, and limits engagement with scholarly debates. But how do we navigate around this? We need to encourage the student to treat AI summaries as entry points only, right? When you summarizing, you are saving yourself from reading all those chapters, all those articles, right? So, but when you find something interesting in these summaries, now you need to go and read the full text. Require discussion on key text during supervision. This is a very good one. Request the key text, the full text from the student. Give me the readings, the chapters, or the literature that you have read to help you construct this work. Right. But now we say, despite all this that is happening, the relationship that probably is full of mistrust, where the supervisor is accusing the student, this is what we have. Colleagues, can you please unmute? Colleagues, can you please mute? I'm not sure where this is coming from. Okay, sorry about that. So supervisory adaptations in the AI era, right? So we're saying supervisors must adapt their mentoring practices. You cannot remain in that space where you were 40 years ago, right? In the digital age where we find ourselves, our students are more techno savvy, right? So new supervisory strategies now therefore should include asking conceptual questions during meetings, right? We cannot have spent 1 hour with the supervisor giving a student feedback about grammar, right? That's redundant, right? We cannot spend a supervision meeting with a supervisor critiquing minor things in the student work, the cosmetic structure, the structure of the work, right, for the student, right? The supervisor needs to rise beyond the challenge now to ask conceptual questions to say, how do these theories influence the analytical process of your findings, right? Justify the application of these theories to your research questions, to your study, right? Instead of asking the students, like, how many theories that you need to, the student can now come up with good theories, right? Now we're saying the supervision relationship now requires students to explain theoretical choices. The student must explain and justify why they've brought these theories to their study, right? And that's where the guidance of the supervisor needs to come into place, because you know from the discipline that you have read many theories, you know other theoretical choices beyond the student is that are far beyond or maybe better than what the student is bringing to the body of knowledge, right? Encouraging critical evaluation of AI output. Right now, the issue of critical evaluation is very important to say, does this paragraph bring substance to the whole section that you're writing about? Right, that's the skills that we need a supervisor to cascade to the students, right? To say, critically evaluate this whole paragraph and see if it's adding anything to the entire body of knowledge or to the entire chapter, to the entire section, right? Instead of highlighting outdated sources, instead of highlighting length of sentences, instead of highlighting those cosmetic things, engage with the sense, the meaning, the point of evaluating if what has been generated really adds to the body of knowledge. That's what the level, the knowledge the supervisor needs now to bring into the student, right? We need to emphasizing reasoning over polished text, right? That speaks back again to the kind of supervision that we found, where the supervisor is concerned about how the text sounds, the grammar and everything. We need to move beyond that, because we can delegate that work to tools, to AI tools, right? So we now need to emphasize reasoning. Are these arguments here being pushed? Are they sound enough? Are they comprehensive? Right? Those are the questions when we are reviewing students' work that we need to do. And on the other end of the matrix, also the student needs to evaluate to say, is this really text that I'm putting here in this paragraph adding to anything to the body of the section that I'm developing? So supervision shifts now from editing documents to evaluating critical thinking, right? That's the shift that we need to see. Right. So we're saying now supervisors, they need to support student intellectual development. Right. Now, in the age of AI, the core goal of supervision now remains to developing independent scholars. Right. But students should use AI to clarify concepts, right? Explore possible research angles, structure ideas, right? Students should not use AI to replace reading, generating final arguments, and produce interpretation of findings, right? We have scenarios again that we have an equal use of AI. I think this one is a very challenging one, right? An equal use of AI. Some students have access to advanced AI tools while others do not have. I mean, you'll find students that have the resources to subscribe and buy these technologies. And these students, they normally produce the best work, and they've leverage you over text and over literature, right? What this can be problematic, because this can create inequality in writing support and research productivity. But now, what can be done is that institutions and supervisors should discuss equitable and access, and emphasizes that AI supports, not replace, intellectual engagement. I mean, I think supervisors, they need to come to the point where they actually suggesting tools for their students and advocating for their disciplines or departments or faculties to buy and subscribe some tools so that we can close the digital divide, the gap between those who have and those who do not have. Right, AI editing versus AI authorship. Students use tools for editing, but the boundary now, we've always mentioned that there is a dichotomy between assisted and AI assisted work, AI generated and AI assisted work, right? Because when you have written your work or when AI has written your work, it's very difficult for the supervisor to draw the line between the two, especially if you have a student who knows how to prompt, right? Who knows how to prompt, or a student who knows how to do reverse engineering, right? A student can just go and take the thesis that you've examined previously, right? And they reverse the whole they reverse the whole writing process that is in that that was used in that thesis, and the product that they produce is similar to how the supervisor wants their work to be done. So this raises questions about intellectual ownership and originality, because the supervisor themselves, they cannot pick up the boundaries between what has been generated, if it is AI assisted or if it is AI generated. So what the supervisor then needs to do is to encourage transparency about AI assistance and distinguish between language refinement and idea generation. It's very important. Right. So another thing that to manage this relationship between the supervisor and the student is that the process in the first meetings that the supervisor and the student have, they need to co-develop AI use guidelines. Right. The supervisor and the student need to sit down and develop early agreements on AI. Number one, acceptable, building on university policies. What is acceptable AI use, right? The disclosure requirements, the limit of AI in writing, responsibility for verifying information. These agreements help avoid misunderstanding later in the research process. They are very important. Come up with templates, memorandum of understanding, the frameworks. Develop these things at an early stage so that you do not upload a student's work on any platform while you didn't discuss about the platforms where you're going to upload it. For example, I have a scenario that I know that there was no agreement between the supervisor and the student as to how the supervisor would verify the student's work, right? And in that process, when the students submitted their literature review, the supervisor took the work and put it on just done, right? And when the supervisor sent back the work and saying your literature review has 85% AI, the student sent back a report from Qbot that is 0%, right, of AI use. Now we are in a limbo. The supervisor has 85%, the student has 0%. Now, whose word goes, right? And you'd find that the supervisor now take the role of the powerful role and say, you follow through what I've used. This is what I've used, and this is what has been accredited. But now the question is, accredited by who? And because the university policy does not allow the tools, the uploading of students' work, when you're talking about data security, now when the supervisor, you are wearing your powerful uniform now as a supervisor and relegating the student to a place of helplessness, of powerlessness. Why? Because you are caught in a limbo. You don't know how to navigate this terrain where you uploaded a student's work without a consent from the student, and you get 85% by the student because they are the owner of the work. They have uploaded it on their preferred tool, which is Qbot, and they have 0%, and they are presenting with their 0%. Now then, how do we progress from here? The problem is the relationship has not been, boundaries were not set from the outset. Boundaries and the parameters were not set from the outset. And it behooves on the supervisor to say, let's agree. These are the tools that we're going to use, right? So the collaborative supervision model, the future of supervision should be collaborative and transparent. Effective AI integrated supervision requires trust. There needs to be trust. Trust, the supervisor must trust the student is not copying and pasting, and the student must trust that the supervisor is not uploading their work somewhere. Very important, without their consent, right? Open communication. Let's talk about these things. Clear ethical guidelines, shared responsibilities, and AI should enhance the learning relationship, not weaken it, like we've been seeing over the past few years. Right. So what do we need now when you're developing a clear boundaries or a framework for supervision? The first consideration is data privacy and security, right? Never enter the sensitive or proprietary or confidential data in public AI tools. Only use institutional approved or sandboxes AI service to prevent data leaks. Right. This should be set out from the onset. Human in the loop. AI should never replace human judgment. This should be set out from the onset. Transparency and disclosure. The supervisor and the student must agree. Require use to declare when AI has been used. This relationship should be set out, right? Other boundaries, verification and accuracy. All AI generated text or analysis must be verified against primary sources. Prohibited applications. Do not use AI for evaluating, analyzing, or predicting human emotions or for making high stakes automated decisions without human review. Human judgment remains critical, and ethical constraints ensure that AI tools do not engage in discriminatory practices such as profiling or unfair scoring. So these boundaries are very important, but there's what we call the green, amber, red framework. Right. So in your discussion with your supervisor or the students, you might need to adopt this framework. The green, amber, red framework, it says green, the things that you approve, brainstorming, outlining, summarizing, and proofreading. Amber, conditional, things that are conditional to be used using AI for drafting with mandatory human review, and if applicable, that should be disclosed. Then red, these are the parameters that the supervisor would say this is prohibited. Using AI to generate final documents, unedited work, or unverified analytical content, or entering sensitive data. So this framework is very important, and we've seen it being used in other places, in other universities by other supervisors. Now, we need to encourage the student or the supervisor to prevent dependency and intellectual outsourcing, right? AI should be adopted as an assistant, not as an author, right? Use AI for initial scaffolding. Use it for to generate outlines, brainstorming ideas, or summarizing long complex papers to determine if they are worth reading in detail, and avoid using AI for final content. It shouldn't be used for the final draft. The final draft should be overseen by the human judgment, right? And identify unseen work, right? Offload AI help us to offload tedious non-intellectual tasks like formatting citations, cleaning data, or summarizing things like that. That's what it should be used for. Now we have basically, in a nutshell, the AI supervision framework, the key points that should be followed out. I know this text is very texty and a lot of it, but on the left, far left, we just have the purpose of AI use, right? When you meet a student, the purpose of AI use, AI, then the expectations of the guidelines, the supervision role, responsibility of the student. For example, we're saying the purpose of AI may be used as a support tool, then the responsibility of the supervisors to clarify acceptable and acceptable tools, then student responsibility will be use AI to support learning and writing without replacing independent scholarship. Then the issue of transparency, its expectations of the supervisor should be set out, then the responsibility of the supervisor and the responsibility of the student. So what we're simply doing is that on the key pillars of using AI, there should be areas of agreement, and these areas of agreement should be the purpose of use, transparency and disclosure, academic integrity, verification of AI outputs, data privacy and confidentiality, ethics of use, AI in writing, accountability, and ongoing dialogue, right? There should be guidelines for each and every one of those, but the responsibility of all parties should be set out clearly. They should be in written form and should be signed by both the supervisor and the supervisee, right? Thank you so much, colleagues. This is where we have come to the end of our presentation in a bid and an effort to regulate and manage the relationship between the supervisor and the student. Thank you so much. I hope you've get something, and I'm sure that most of the things that I'm talking about, some of you might have experience them or you actually know them, right? So we are just gonna take the next 10 minutes for comments, questions, and responses and feedback before we call it a day. Right, managing the supervisor and student relationship in the age of AI. Let's hear your experiences before we call it a day. Right, I'm taking hands. Those of us who want to comment, this is the time. Right, there is Kemi, Tayo Kemi. You can go ahead. Then there is Taba, yes, in that
Good
order.
morning. Thank you very much. What an interesting training. We really enjoyed the training and we appreciate too. I only have one question. This training, can we get the recording?
Sure, you can get the recording anytime. You can get the recording anytime.
Thank you very much.
Yes, let's move on to the next Taba.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this informative AI supervision workshop. I have one question about,
Yes.
you said there is assisted or generated. What is the difference between assisted and generated AI or usage of AI? How can we detect or how to go about knowing it is assisted or generated? Or you talk of the difference between the two, that we need to be careful which one we are using. But I just remember assisted.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
There's a little AI who just joined me here. You forgive me. So the difference between the two is that your assisted is where you creating your own work, right? You writing your own work, or you construct your own arguments or your paragraphs or your chapter, right? Then you go to ChatGPT to fine tune it, right? To enhance it, to improve grammar, to strengthen the arguments and the flow of sentences, or you can use Grammarly on that. But AI generated is where you go with one prompt and say, write for me a chapter. Then the chapter comes out, right? That then becomes AI generated, right? You might know that that's what you've done, but for a supervisor, that may be very difficult for them to pick it up, that's what you've done. So the difference between the two is blurred, right? If not blended. It's very difficult to pick up unless the supervisor is an AI themselves, right? It's very difficult to pick up. You cannot pick it up easily. But we need to be very careful of that one. But that's the relationship between. If you go to our YouTube, we did a presentation on the difference between the two on our first, I think it is the 24th of January. Yes, around January, there's a presentation that we did that shows the difference between the two. You might need to go and watch that one so that it can assist you to get the practical aspect and practical know-how of that aspect. Yes, there is another hand from.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Yes, you may go ahead. Who's that? There's Simi. Yes. Then there's Mapamba. Yes, you can go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dr. Moringa. As always, your presentation are top notch. Thank you very much for the presentation. Today I have a very short and question that I have. At UKZN, they have already organized an AI clinic whereby they inform the students that our research proposals and the dissertation as a whole will be evaluated using AI. And the university made it very clear that they are most interested in the prompts that students are going to use. Now, the question that I have, how can we ensure that the whole process is done correctly, such that throughout the process, I'm able to keep all my prompts in one place, and when the work has been submitted and the university demands this prompt, the students are able to give all the prompts that have been used in the study. Thank you very much, Doc.
All right, thank you so much. Very interesting one there from you, Simi. So, well done to UKZN. I was partly involved then. That was some years back, But I think what the benefit of using the platforms like ChatGPT and stuff, they have a very good memory, right? They have a very good memory such that everything that you've punched in there, you can always go back and retrieve it, right? What I normally do is that when I've developed a chapter or a paper using ChatGPT, whatever I've done there, at every stage I say it to ChatGPT, develop for me a matrix table, right? I command it to develop me a matrix table of the purpose, the role, the activity, and the output that came out from there. So at every stage I have a table that capture what I've done, the prompts that I've punched in there, and the purpose that they've served, right? The purpose that the prompts have served, and the brief explanation of the output that came out from there, right? So that I have a record of everything that I've been doing at each and every stage, so that I can print out at a later stage or keep not print as such, but I can copy and paste those tables and make them my appendix and keep them in my appendix, so that if anybody asks me, what did you do? Right, I'll just present to them to say, this is the prompt, this is the role the prompt played, right? And this is what was the output, and this is how it has enhanced the work that I've done. So I have a logbook of everything that I've been doing, so that I won't be caught unprepared. No one can catch me unprepared of what I've done. The problem is when you are lying, right, that you have used ChatGPT to enhance your work, right? You do not have a matrix table of what you've been doing. You can't prove that this is what I've been doing, right? So you'll be found wanting, you'll be caught off guard, right? So the best way is to say everything that you've done, every step, ask ChatGPT to generate for you a matrix table that capture all those things for you, so that you won't have problems with your supervisor or the university when somebody is thinking that what you've developed there is not right, or is not good, or is heavily AI infested. So normally, always my advice is that always have a matrix table. Request a matrix table from ChatGPT or from any platform that you have, so that you do not you won't find unwinding. There's another hand from Ibrahim, then there's another hand from Mabambe and Magos. Right, so let's start with Ibrahim.
So thank you, our facilitator. Good morning, sir.
Yes, good morning.
Yes, sir. Some countries have approved the use of AI for research and development, but in some other parts of the country, the war against it is rising on a daily basis. When you write something, they check with plagiarism. When you are able to get certain percent, they look for the content of the AI. And based on experience, we've done some research or some experiment that we write something with our hand, and we test with something like Turnitin or some other checker, and it will bring out that it still tell us that there are some certain percent of plagiarism, and which is actually discouraging some students or bringing about the trust issue, as we have stated. What can the university and the stakeholder in academic setting can be done to chart a national policy that we tackle this problem and allow some certain percentage, some certain use or acceptable use of these tools? Thank you, sir.
All right, so that's an interesting one, I should say. So with regards to charting out an AI policy, that's one that well, I think there's needs for a lot of advocacy from the universities, from you guys, so that you can give them a compounding reason. I mean, I'm surprised that there are people who are so fascinated, who are still debating whether AI should be involved in research or not. I mean, I thought 2 years ago we dealt with that issue right across the board. But despite that, I think there is needs for more advocacy, and universities or whosoever, there needs to be presented with case studies of what other universities have done, so that they can benchmark their policies or their stands or their positions with what is happening elsewhere. I mean, if you are refusing the use of AI in research, I'm confident to say that you are creating a cohort of graduates that are not ready, are not industry ready, right? Why? Because the industry itself has already highlighted that they are using AI tools, right? Then if you now releasing a group of PhD graduates or master's graduates that do not know how to use or how not to probe or how not to conduct research using these tools, when they get into high-stake industry research areas where it is intensive and the results are actually needed, like yesterday, and they do not know how to harness and use these tools, you are setting them for failure. And that's where you will come up with students or graduates that are not responsive to the needs of the industry, unless you want to keep them at your own university. But that doesn't help either. Right, so advocacy is really needed, and those universities or or institutions, they really need to benchmark with other universities. Right, so that would be my response. Let's hear from Bambe before we go to Sasiri.
Oh, thank you. No, I just wanted to say, like, when you were talking about the difference between generated or assisted and the one that is generated, I just wanted to say, the problem that we have on our side is students, I think, is that we have already set a minimum number of years that we want to finish the course and whatsoever. But we are forgetting as well to say, along the process, we should be able to learn how to do research in a way that enable us to be people who are ready to, like, produce as well knowledge. And I don't think there is a production of knowledge whereby someone just go to AI tools and just say, do everything for me, while you don't master what are you doing. So I think there it should be a situation where we should be able to say, okay, yes, of course, I have to get assisted by AI, but also let me put my effort into reading my content, trying to make sure that this thing is relevant, or this research is, especially, let me say, literature review. Let me ensure that it's relevant, because at some point you find that we are not being able to make it relevant. We are just generating things, because by the end we are just saying, no, we want to finish by in 1.5 years or in 2 years or whatsoever. I think it's very, very important for all of us to say, yes, the supervisor and myself, we need to come to a point where we like have a balance between the two to say, okay, I want to finish my work at this point, but let me also be someone who is ready to accept things that I can do, so that by the end of the process, I am a qualified person who knows what he's doing. I think that's something that, because the problem with other people is that the moment you say, no, I want to finish in 1.5 years, how do you finish in 1.5 years? That's something that someone has to ask himself. Okay, I want to finish in 1 year, or I want to finish in 1.5 years, I want to finish in 2 years. What am I doing? Because the problem will be, we want just things to be done in a way that favors us, but we are also not conceding to say, okay, I should be also doing A, B, C, so that by the end of the day, I will be able, because what we should do, let's read, make our things better, and now we use AI to say, okay, you know what, summarize, auto-write, and other things. Not just to say you go to the AI, you just generate everything. And by the end of the day, you don't know anything about what you were doing. You were just generating things. But in actual sense, there's nothing that you know. So I think there's something that we as the supervised, we should be able to say to ourselves, what do I want to do? Because by the end of the day, it is me who is going to be churned out of the university and do something to produce knowledge. How will I produce that same knowledge? Thank you so much.
Hello, sir.
All right, thank you so much for that. That was really informative, Mambabe.
Hello, sir.
Just a second. All right. So yes, that was very powerful. I mean, the question about completing, right? It's a different question altogether, because I'll argue that you can there are cases of people who've completed their PhD in 1 year, way before there was AI. Right, and you can use AI and not complete your work in 1 year or so, because the completion of a PhD thesis is regulated by administrative processes within the university, right? So there's a lot of factors that play. But if you are talking about completing the document, right, you can complete the whole PhD document if you have your data in a week, right? That can be done. But getting the whole process through, that won't happen in a week, right? That might take you 2 years, even if you have the whole document by yourself, right? So that we need to make that distinction. But completing the document in a week, right, or in a year, completing the document in a year, I think beyond you copying and pasting, there should be engagement with the work. There should be engagement with scholarly literature. There should be engagement with the theories. There should be intensive reading, right? Such that, and I appreciate universities are moving away from the saying just submit the document for your thesis. You need to come and defend what you have produced, right? They're moving away from you just coming to say, this is what I've done, guys, send it for examination, to say, when you have done what you've done, come here and sit down and tell us what you've done. Let's go through the literature. Let's go through your problem statement. Let's go through your questions. Let's go through your theoretical framework. Tell us, sit down here, stand and defend. Let's ask you questions, so that we know that whatever you claim to have been, whatever you are professing to have done, you are in acquaintance with it. You can defend it with it, right? When you're saying this, defend that argument, tell us what that argument it is, right? That's where we need to get into place. And if you and your supervisor did not do that in the process of supervision, and if your supervisor is a lazy supervisor waiting for the document to read and look at grammar and flow, and if the headings are there, and if the theories that they think are right are there, you're going to be caught at the end of the supervision of the examination. Because, and that's the problem we're having with supervisors, right? We have supervisors who wants to increase the output, right, regardless of looking at whether the output is of quality or not, right? You want to tick the boxes. How many of you graduated? You've been in the system for a long time. Go, write. Send me the complete work. Send it to me quick. We need to meet the deadline, right? Read it through. Send it for editing. The grammar is fine. Okay, good. The theories are there. The data was analyzed. But is there any new knowledge in what you're producing? That's where we need to get to. That's the point we need to get to, and that's very important. Right, and we need to move on beyond that. So that's where that's the point when the position we've got to, right? Let's hear a hand from Magoso and Cerisa. I'm not sure if you guys have already said.
I'm here.
Yes, Magoso.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Prof. Morning, colleagues. Prof, is it advisable? Sorry, Prof, perhaps you have covered this area. Is it advisable to upload your proposal to this AI for review before you take in your proposal to the committee? Thank you, Prof.
Yes, so it's advisable, it's not advisable at the same time, right? Depending with what platform you're using. I want to tell you that the moment you upload your proposal on ChatGPT, you've lost control of the idea, right? If you've so much into intellectual property, right? Just know that the ideas that you have in your proposal, you've shared it with the whole world. Right, that comes in the issue of data privacy and security. There is no guarantee that somebody is not going to use the ideas that you have, right? So they can be used by anybody else, right? Intellectual property. But it's also advisable because you comparing your work with a pool of other ideas that are out there, right? And you are reviewing your work with a body of knowledge that exists, that is millions and millions of literature, right? So that might help you to strengthen it. But if you're concerned about data security, you don't need to upload your work. But I'll tell you that there are more benefits in reviewing your work on an AI platform that is trained on millions of database than to send it to one person who has limited knowledge in a specific discipline. So the benefits, you need to weigh the benefits, right? What is it that you are getting yourself into? But the proposal is fine. What I advise people not to upload is the data itself. Your findings, it's not advised to upload your data or your findings on these platforms because you're already sharing the findings that you have not published with the whole world. So it's very important for you not to upload your findings or your data with other people. Right, hope that answers the question. Let's hear the last hand from Ceresi. I'm not sure if there are things in the chats.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir, for your presentation. It's such a wonderful one. I've gained a lot. I have an observation and I also have a question.
Yes.
One, the Western world brought the AI thing to us. And till now, there is no uniform policy guiding this except institutional base, which of course is a good one. It's so intriguing for me to find out of late that even in the Western world now, there is an acceptable use of AI, and even journals. I have found out of late also that there are journals that expect you. These are journals that are credible. That before you submit an article to them, they will direct you to an AI platform to run your manuscript through it to be sure that just to ensure consistency with their format and all that. Now, it's also interesting that at the level of university, we find out that some lecturers, despite university policy, they are still policing students because they are not ready to shift ground. Now we are using AI to judge AI, meaning turning it to judge what was written using AI. It's like a policy somersault or an idea that's counterintuitive. That is just one. Then, in the area of writing thesis, what do you see? What is your opinion about this? I, for one, what I usually do is I know fully well that before this time, students have been, even before AI, they are facing a lot of challenges writing thesis. Now they see AI as a leeway. But as for me, what I usually do is I will sit down, have a meeting with my supervisees as to the nitty-gritty of writing, thesis writing. These are the things that I expected at different sections of a thesis. So when they write, I don't have too much problem of thought. We have an agreement, just like you have highlighted. We have agreement on how to go about things. If you use AI, this is how to use it and all that. But I think that will make things easy. That's my thinking, and it has been working for me. And also, some supervisors don't have time to actually do that. It's a thought and bad thing. Go and write, bring it, I judge. Go and write, bring it, I read, I judge. What do you see today? Hello? Hello?
Yes, I'm here. I'm having a network problems. It's stabilizing and I'm breaking up. Right. So what you're saying is very important. I should say and admit what you're saying is very important. But now when you're talking about the issue of agreements, like you mentioned, it's very important. It's very important to have those agreements, right? That you have those agreements at any given time, right? And the aspect of outsourcing, I'm not sure if I got that right, but what was the key question? Please remind me the key question that you're asking. Was it a contribution? Just shortly,
Yes.
the question.
The key question is, what do you see to the idea of, you have alluded to it in your training during your presentation, that students and lecturers should sit, supervisors should sit and agree on the use of AI. That is the area you alluded to. Then I am saying that before now, students have been having challenges writing thesis. And I said, what I usually do is invite the students, sit with them, through the process of article writing, thesis writing, from session to session. I know not all lecturers, can do that. Not all supervisors can do that. Training them. What is your take in that area?
Yeah, that's how the supervision process should go. I think you're doing a really good job. Sit down with them, train them how to write. But now you're training them how to write. It should begin from the traditional, but including the collaborative AI tools, right? It's
Yes.
pointless. It's pointless for you to take them back to traditional ways of writing, whereas you know for a fact that they're using AI tools to write. So more than anything, you're training them how to write should go to the point of teaching them how to verify text that has been written for them, because that's what they're going to do, right? You should never ever pay a blind side to that, because that's what they're going to do. Right. I saw a hand. I think last hand is Teo, then MNG. Last hand from Teo, then MNG.
Hello, Doc.
Yes, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you kindly repeat your question?
MNG raised a hand, so I thought there was a comment from MNG.
Oh, I see. No, I was one of the things that I wanted to reflect on about debates on AI tools and whatnot. Yeah, those are critical and important cries, but unless we develop our own platforms to manage those kind of things, we always cry on other people's systems and infrastructures that they've developed. And if the university decides that this is what we are going to do, there is no other way we are going to protest and unless we try to define our own mechanisms of how we are going to do it. So I think our biggest problem so far, especially when it comes to the AI revolution, has been to be on the back seat rather than us as academics to sit and think with one voice as to what can we advance, how can we develop our own platforms and systems, what partnerships can we develop, can we engage, so that we can shape and develop systems that that represent us. I think personally, I've always thought and believed that the AI development has put us on an equal footing, but of course, the biggest challenge so far is that we haven't started innovating or developing our own tools. The database is already there. Most of them are open access. So what we simply need is to develop our own platforms, which will reflect and shape the way we want things to be done. And that way, I think it will be much more better. But of course, that's a story for another day. Just to reflect on the aspects and the debates on things that currently we do not have control over. But of course, if we put our minds together, we can actually develop our own solutions in that regard. But we can't complain about the university's decision, because that's what they've decided. The question is, what then is your solution, and what are we working towards too? Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Dr. G. Let's hear from KBC Shoba. KBC, are you there?
Yes, Doc, I'm here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Doc, I have a personal question. So I've been struggling to get hold of you. I'm not so sure whether can I remain in the meeting after everyone has departed. Thank you.
All right, so what we can do is I'll give you my number, then you call me, because I'm gonna leave the meeting right after we end. So Lisa, are you saying something? Right, I'm gonna give let me give you quickly my email address. Send an email to info@mg, then I'll send you an email, my phone number there, then you call me.
Okay, thank you so much, Doc.
You know our email address, right?
Yes, I do.
Right, just send an email there. I'll respond to you with my phone, with my cell, then you call me.
Okay, thank you so much.
The last one was Kemi. I'm not sure if Kemi.
She has spoken. She was the first person that spoke.
I was spoken.
All right, then if that's the case, there's Tamsanga.
Thank you, Doc. I'm working as a librarian.
Yes.
And there is somebody who raised the tension between licensed database business people and the fact that they are not really promoting the use of these AI tools. And there's very few databases that has this AI element. I think Scopus AI, Science Direct, and I think Google Scholar being a search engine. So Doc, there's that tension between database business people and AI tools. And I'm not sure what's your view on that. Secondly, do you trust, if I put, for instance, a prompt that says do not ingest this information or reuse it for your own training, do you think these tools respect that? Thank you, Doc.
Right. So I don't think the tools respect those, because there is no guarantee for data privacy at any of these tools, right? There is no guarantee. And said to say is that we have, when we sign agree because we want to be part to use the tools. No, there is fine print that we do not read. Right, we agree to our information being used somewhere else for marketing purposes or to be collected and stuff like that. So we've signed all those things. So there can't be a guarantee that your data is not going to be used anyway, because they're actually collecting that data to train it, right? So that they can use it to answer other people's questions when they prompt. So the first question, I didn't get the first question quite well. Do you care repeating it in brief shortly?
Doc, universities buy licenses from publishers.
Yes.
And publishers are there to make money. And if they see that the students, the academics, and the researchers are using less of their tools, they are now more dependent on open access tools. I know that Google Scholar is not a database, but a search engine. But there are papers that you wouldn't get from Google Scholar. So I also wanted to ask you, most of your sources, do you get them from licensed databases like Scopus, ProQuest, and others, or do you rely mostly from Google Scholar? So there's that tension between publishers who are selling the information through licenses and openly available information. Thank you, Doc.
All right, that's an interesting one. I mean, because for me, what I do is that I actually encourage and rely on open sources. For example, I encourage the use of Google Scholar. I encourage the use of I encourage the use of things like your chat GPT that are free versions, you know. Why? Because I understand that there's that digital divide. Most students, PhD and masters, they do not afford the use of, you know, this subscribed version unless the universities provided those for them. So that tension, I mean, will always be there, because most use is on your free versions. Google Scholar, I know Scopus is subscribed, you need to go through university and stuff like that. So that tension always exists. But I mean, let's look at the pros and benefits of it. How much sources do you get, or do you retrieve from an open version or an subscribed version, right? That limits in the long run, the quality and kind of sources that you have. For example, if something is not on open access, an article is not on open access, if you don't have the university access, then you won't access it, right? And you never use it. But I'll tell you that there's AI platforms that can actually retrieve that work for you, right? Even if it is behind the paywalls, right? Open access AI tools can access that information for you. How? I don't know how they can access it for you.
Do we have a list of those AI tools, Doc, that can do that work? I'm interested in them. Sorry.
I have one for books, right? It's pirating, right? That's pirating. So I can't share that with you. But I know for a fact there is a platform that can retrieve books that are behind paywalls, and the full books, actually, in actual fact, and articles, they can retrieve that for you. But send me an email. Send me an email. Send us an email.
I'll do that, Doc. And then, Doc, just lastly from me, you said one must keep a logbook of all the prompts that you have used, and like a matrix, you have mentioned aspects in that prompt that you should actually talk about. And I'm interested in those aspects, Doc, that you've actually indicated.
All right. So with regards to the metrics, what I suggest is that schedule a free 20 minutes consultation with us next week. Then we'll take you through those.
Will do. Thanks, Doc.
Right. Thank you so much, colleagues. I think we've come to the end of our workshop. Thank you so much for attending, and thank you for coming out in numbers. Next week, same time and same place, we're going to be doing some other interesting stuff that we'll share with you. You'll see the flyer. Thank you so much for keeping time. spending a whole hour and other minutes there listening to us. Right, share the word and spread our flyers out there. Invite us to your universities so that we can do hands-on presentations and train your researchers and your students with you. Arrange retreats for us. We can come there 2 day, 1 week, over the weekend, master classes. We can do that for you. Thank you so much and have a great weekend. Thank you so much. God bless.
Siyabonga.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
Victor.